After months of talking with Generation Z voters and speculating what effect they would have on the 2020 election, young voters showed up at the polls. Metaphorically speaking, of course, as a record number of people voted by mail this year. On Saturday, November 7th, 4 long days after Election Day, we learned that former Vice President Joe Biden had surpassed the 270 electoral votes needed to secure the majority and win the presidency.
Good morning. We have breaking news results from the state of Pennsylvania. Those results are in right now, and based on what we are seeing there, we can say that Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. is on track to win the state of Pennsylvania, become the 46th president of the United States.
Donald Trump had been defeated after only one term in the Oval Office. While many of the larger, more left-leaning cities around the United States, from LA to NYC, celebrated the news with parades of cars honking and cheering in the streets, this news was not celebrated or even accepted by many other Americans. Following the lead of President Donald Trump, many conservative voters around the country refused to accept these results, claiming voter fraud and siding with Trump in demanding lawsuits and recounts in many swing states. I spoke with Gen Z voter Mitch Williams about his thoughts on the election and the results.
I am very conservative, but also I think that can be misconstrued with like the typical conservative as a Generation Z. Like, I feel like my term or definition of conservative would be different than someone 30 years ago. Looking back on why I voted for Trump in 2016, I really bought into the idea of him being an outsider. So my main issues probably were the economy. I knew he was successful with our economy. Safety, because my dad, he did have to go overseas 3 times for different wars. And so that like safety, whether it be on our homeland or just around the world, I feel like it was important for us to get out of wars and foreign conflicts. And so the economy, safety, and then I believe it was like a issue for 24% of voters in 2016, maybe it was 23%. Their top reason for voting for Donald Trump was for Supreme Court justices. And so that was a big deal for me. So I did vote for him again. And yeah, I'm a little disappointed. And if it makes it through all these legal battles that are about to come up, then yeah, I'll support Joe Biden. But obviously it was going to take a lot of time, like with all these ballots coming in from all over the country, mailing in ballots. He knew that was going to be the case. So, and also Joe Biden said it could take a couple days, couple weeks, whatever. And so I feel though, like being on Trump's side of things, the media is very negative towards him. Just saying the media not being on his side, being 96% negative coverage of the man, like he has, if they're not going to fight for him in like a valid and fair election, then who is, like, so I feel like he has to make a stand for himself. And, it seemed as though, like, for the past 4 years that people didn't accept that Hillary lost and there was a Russian collusion hoax and everything going on. And I think, I'm not saying that I won't move on or Trump shouldn't move on. I'm thinking that if they can wait 4 years to not determine or not accept the results, I think Trump can wait until January 20th.
While there is still speculation on the part of some conservative voters, here is what we know so far about young voter turnout. A November 6th analysis from the Center for Information and Research on Civic Learning and Engagement at Tufts University revealed the following information about youth voter turnout. Youth voter turnout surged by about 8% this year compared to 2016. The percent of eligible youth voters who cast votes in this election grew from 45% in 2016 to 53% in 2020. The total votes coming from youth voters grew from 16% in 2016 to 17% this year. Consistent with the Gen Z voters I spoke with, the top 3 issues that drove young voters to the polls this year were the coronavirus, racism, and climate change. According to estimates from the New York Times, 62% of youth voters nationwide cast their vote for Joe Biden, compared to 35% for Trump.
My generation's a lot more open-minded, so I think now is the time for change.
And I'm just wanting someone who's like accepting and, is okay with change.
So did Gen Z affect the results of this election? Well, Joe Biden is the 46th president-elect of the United States, and that is due, at least in part, to Gen Z voters.